You're sitting there scrolling through a dozen pre-built rigs, wondering which one will actually sit quietly in your room, fire up in a minute, and let you game at 144 frames per second without blowing your budget on a flashy spec sheet you'll never use. The fear is real. Spend a lot on a machine that's either overkill for the games you play or underpowered when the next patch drops, and you end up with a dusty tower in the corner. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What I tried to figure out before hitting record was simple. Does this Skytech Gaming King 95 give you the reliability and day-to-day ease you need, or is it just another name on a list of numbers? I dug through a handful of community threads, read the occasional I built my own comparison, and asked a few friends who already own Skytech rigs about their long-term experience. The consensus was clear: the real value comes from how the components work together, not just the headline-grabbing RTX 5070 Ti or the Ryzen 7 7700X. Let's start with who this machine is really built for. If you're a serious gamer who plays AAA titles like Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, or the latest Call of Duty on high settings, and you also dabble in occasional video editing or 3D rendering, the King 95 lines up nicely. The 32GB of DDR5 at 6000 MHz means you won't hit a RAM bottleneck when you have a browser, Discord, and the game running side by side. The 2TB Gen4 NVMe SSD is another quiet win. Loading times drop to single-digit seconds even for the biggest open-world maps, and you still have plenty of space for a growing library without having to juggle external drives. Now, if you're the type who mainly streams indie titles, does some casual Roblox, and doesn't plan to push 4K resolution, this is probably more power than you'll ever tap. The same goes for anyone who is comfortable building a PC themselves and can cherry-pick each part for a tighter price. In those cases, the premium you pay for a pre-built, especially one with an ARGB laden case and a 360mm AIO cooler, may not translate into noticeable benefits. Speaking of the cooler, that's one of the hidden strengths of this rig. The 360mm all-in-one liquid cooler isn't just a showpiece. It actually keeps the 7700X running under 70 degrees Celsius during extended 2-hour gaming sessions. In practice, that means the CPU doesn't throttle when you're in a marathon raid or a long session of Flight Simulator. I've heard from a friend who runs the same cooling loop that his system stayed quiet enough that the fans barely registered on his bedroom mic, which is a big plus if you game late at night and don't want the whole house to hear you. On the flip side, the trade-off is the size and weight of the case. The King 95 comes in a fairly large tower to accommodate the AIO, the RTX 5070 Ti, and a roomy PSU. If you live in a cramped apartment or plan to move the rig frequently, you'll find it a bit of a hassle to get it through narrow doorways or onto a small desk. The front panel also leans heavily into the RGB aesthetic, which some users love but others find distracting. The lights are bright enough to affect the ambient glow in a dim room. Power delivery is solid thanks to the 850W80 plus Gold PSU. In real terms, you'll never be worrying about the system tripping a breaker when you push the GPU to its max while the CPU is turbo boosting. The PSU also gives you headroom if you ever decide to upgrade the GPU again in a few years. However, that gold-rated efficiency does add to the price tag, and if you're the kind of buyer who prefers a lean, energy-saving setup, you're paying for a safety margin you may never need. Connectivity is another practical point. The built-in Wi-Fi 802.11 AC is reliable enough for most gaming sessions, but if you have a gigabit fiber line and want the lowest latency possible, you'll still want to hook up a wired Ethernet cable, which this machine supports without any extra adapters. The lack of bloatware is a relief. You get Windows 11 clean, and the only pre-installed software is the basic drivers and a simple system monitoring app. That means you can jump straight into a game after a quick Windows update, rather than sorting through a mountain of trialware. One concern many first-time pre-built buyers have is post-purchase support. Skytech offers a 3-year warranty on the whole system, and the community forums are fairly active. The downside is that you'll often have to ship the entire tower back for RMA, which can be inconvenient if a component fails mid-season. For a machine this complex, though, the risk of a single component failing is relatively low, especially with the reputable components, AMD, NVIDIA, Samsung Type SSD, inside. Let's talk about price versus performance. At its current MSRP, the King 95 sits a little higher than a DIY build with similar parts, but you're paying for assembly, testing, and the peace of mind that comes with a